Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches. Today I'm going to be talking about the 1973 low-budget horror film Horror High. And in this film we meet Vernon Potts, a socially awkward high school student who frequently experiences bullying and other cruel behaviours at the hands not just of the students at his school but also the teachers. The hiring practices at this place are pretty bad, it would seem. Despite these factors, he does manage to develop a friendship with one classmate, Robin Jones, much to the disapproval of her boyfriend, high school jock Roger Davis. Now, Vernon's social awkwardness is causing him to struggle in English, but he's definitely a smart kid. He excels at biology and chemistry, and he has in fact been secretly working on an experimental new drug as a class project, as you do. Late one night, he sneaks into the school to administer the drug to his test subject, a guinea pig named Mr. Mumps. On this particular night, however, the drug has caused Mr. Mumps to transform into a small but ferocious and rabid little beast, which kills the janitor's cat. Vernon is understandably upset by this and tries to dispose of the cat's body, but the janitor discovers him while he is in the process of doing so. Leaping to the conclusion that Vernon killed the cat himself, the janitor beats him up. Quite a harsh reaction, and then in an even more harsh and somewhat improbable decision, forces Vernon to drink the same drug he has been giving to Mr. Mumps. Now, as you might imagine, that ends poorly for the janitor. Vernon transforms into a violent monster and kills him. Vernon then tries to conceal the body, but as with the cat, he doesn't prove very successful. The janitor's remains are soon found and the cops called in. Luckily, there's nothing currently to link Vernon to the death. Or perhaps not so luckily, at least for the students and faculty of the school. As I said, they're almost all prone to picking on Vernon, and well, Vernon figures that he doesn't need to put up with that anymore. Anyone who crosses him now is going to get permanently crossed off themselves. So Horror High was filmed on a meagre $70,000 or so, and then on release was initially rated X by the MPAA. In order to combat that, they created a significantly sanitised PG version released under the alternative title Twisted Brain. And the cuts to that version were so significant that they actually filmed 8 minutes of additional footage with little connection to the rest of the movie to bulk the runtime back up. However, the original cut of the film was eventually re-rated to R and is now available on DVD. It's probably also available on some streaming services, but I own it on DVD, so I've not looked for it. The real question, though, is should you look for it? Well, let's talk about that. So as you may have already guessed from the plot summary, Horror High's screenwriter first conceived of the film as Jekyll and Hyde if it was set in a high school. The plot similarities are pretty evident. You've got a meek biochemist who develops a serum that allows him to turn into a brutal monster and who finds himself enjoying the power and freedom that this immoral alter ego provides. The movie certainly doesn't hide the light of its inspiration under a bushel. It starts, in fact, with Vernon in class watching a film adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's novella. And so I appreciate that the movie acknowledges the connection. It's the honest thing to do, obviously, but just as importantly, it gives the audience a tip about the film's basic plot trajectory. It feels to me a bit like the filmmakers giving you a sly little nudge, as if they're saying, "We all know where this is going, right? Buckle up and enjoy." And I feel like it's a good launch pad for the rest of the movie. It allows you to really quickly hit the ground running. I've already alluded to the film's low budget. In modern terms, it was made for what is roughly equivalent to a film being made today for less than $500,000, which, you know, in a household budget is a lot of money, but in Hollywood is less than 1% of the cost of a typical feature film. And look, the restricted resources are clear in the film's special effects, or, in fact, lack thereof. Vernon's transformation scenes consist mostly of the actor groaning and writhing while facing away from the camera, and once the transformation is complete, he is kept off screen or in heavy shadow. We do occasionally see his hands, which have become large and hairy, but little else. To the filmmakers' credit, though, they seem to have spent their casting budget wisely. None of the on-screen performers have become what I'd call household names. The highest profile cast member is probably John Nyland, and he's not famed as an actor, he's famed as a football player. He was part of the Super Bowl winning Dallas Cowboys team of 1972. This appears to have been his only on-screen role. Beyond him, the most prominent cast member is Austin Stoker, who plays a police lieutenant here, and a couple of years later would go on to lead the cast of John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13. Everyone else in the film has an even lower kind of public profile, but they all prove solidly capable within the roles they're asked to play. At least they are in the uncut theatrical release. I can't comment on the quality of acting in the additional footage that they recorded for Twisted Brain. I haven't seen that. So overall, the film may not have had much money to spend, but what they did have, I think they seem to have spent pretty wisely. Overall, I found Horror High to be schlocky fun. The basic premise is decent stuff, and the film rattles along at a good pace. But I would definitely put the emphasis on the schlocky part of schlocky fun. The threadbare nature of the production is pretty obvious at times, and the script is definitely more interested in setting up the next Jekyll and Hyde murder scene than it is in giving us any deep connection to the characters or insight into their thought processes. For instance, after his first murder is more or less forced upon him, Vernon pretty quickly seems to embrace the idea that killing people is an acceptable problem-solving technique. And the film does nothing to really examine that. It goes out of its way, in fact, to give both Vernon and the audience plenty of reason to resent the victims who obligingly line up to get on his bad side. Now, integrating more nuance and examination of Vernon's motives and actions would have been a challenge. You don't want to bog down a horror movie too much with talking and reflection. So I can see why they would decide not to risk it. But if done well, I think it would have lifted the film to something a bit more memorable than the lightweight action horror hijinks it ultimately became. Still, if lightweight action horror hijinks are what you're looking for, you could certainly do a lot worse. I know I have. Next time, I think a film that might fairly be described as less than the sum of its parts. It's the 2007 fantasy adventure Stardust. But that's next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.